So yay, this is the first episode of what the working title is of Beyond Influential Unfiltered. And I'm joined today and I'm really excited by really my number two in the business. And I feel like just my ride or die in general, Shannon O'Donovan, who was on Beyond Influential episode 99 at the end of 2019. And a lot has changed since then. I don't know if is that like the biggest understatement, Shannon?
Yes, definitely. We've done a lot of things in the last year and a half. We've gone through a lot of ups and downs, and that's just part of normal business stuff. But yeah, it's definitely been a process.
So I want to talk about where Unfiltered came from because, yeah, this is the first of, I know, many episodes of this, but it's also going to be an evolution because we're trying different things out. And this is our first time. But I've been really craving, especially over the last year, sharing, and based on feedback too, sharing hot takes, sharing what's going on in current events, sharing my real-time reactions all around things that are going on in culture and the creator culture, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to business, when it comes to just really anything going on in general, anything influencing us at any level. There's just a lot of things that I'm like, oh, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about that. And then because I guess Beyond Influential itself had been not so produced, but basically the solo episodes felt more like tactical teaching.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted this to feel like more of a conversation and more real time. Like, we're going to talk about things that are real time, and we're going to do some of those things today. And I think that's always been, I know when I post about it on Instagram or when I talk about things and on my email list, I think we just get to this point where it's like people want these insights. Even I'm constantly looking at these things and I think that they're interesting, but then if you wait too long to talk about it, it's not relevant anymore. And that's just not fun. And I just think that there's so much to say and so much to learn in real time that doesn't work for the solo episode, in quotes, solo episode format, and isn't an interview.
I think part of it is that, like you said, it's not that it's like that the main part, our normal episodes are over. It's not that just the production, it's just that they're structured. You typically go into conversations, whether it's a solo or you're interviewing somebody, it's structured. You know what you want to talk about versus us just having a conversation. And for everybody listening, like that little behind the scenes glimpse, I think part of what led to this, the fact that, you and I will have conversations and then we get into these topics and we have this whole interesting conversation that goes for an hour or two and we're just chatting and it's like, damn, we should have recorded this. Like, oh, this is really interesting, we should have this on the podcast. And so now it's like, okay, why don't we actually sit down and record these conversations?
And I'll send you things. I feel like another thing is that Beyond Influential, just the conversations that I've been having on that podcast, I don't think people get to know me and like really my personality. I feel like it's so serious sometimes. And I don't feel like, maybe you can tell, I don't feel like I'm a serious person. I take my business seriously. Like, you don't fuck with my business. Like, I get shit done, but at the same time, I'm not like overly serious. And every night, pretty much every night, like I have running commentary. I'll be watching whatever on YouTube, on the TV, or on whatever show we're watching. And Shannon's laughing. You've watched TV with me before. Like, like Hachi's just like, my husband is just like, we should just set up the camera and we're like, you should just be streaming live your reactions and your takes on these. Like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? And now he's been saying it to me enough that it's like, okay, you know what? Like, I do want to be doing this. He was like, well, maybe you shouldn't always do it live because maybe you don't want all of your takes out there, just stream of consciousness. But, a lot of them are just things that, yeah, I think are maybe even more on the entertaining side, but also still, I think it's entertaining. It can be educational. I don't really know. And I think that's also something interesting. It's like, I'm down to put this out there without, I don't fully know where it's going. We've talked, I have a vision, I have ideas. I know what direction I'm moving in, but I'm willing to put this out there way before it's perfect.
Yeah. I think going back to, it's interesting because we're talking about like you being serious or people not seeing that side. I think, like you said, you take the business seriously. You know how to take things seriously that should be taken seriously, but you're not a serious person. You're actually really funny, and you like you said, the reactions. I'm just laughing because, yeah, I've watched shows of you, or I've watched these things, and frankly, to me, what I think of is like Mystery Science Theater 3000. You know, like those little robots. But instead of them sitting in movie theaters, us just like, or you just reacting to, yeah, YouTube videos or these different things. But that commentary is hilarious and it's funny, or it's really just witty and sharp and on point. Like, yeah, I think showing people that is fun, frankly.
And I don't want to call it like, listen, like funny subjective. So I don't want to be like, I'm funny. Like I'm not like I'm fun. And here's the deal. My sense of humor, I will use that. My sense of humor is very much I don't know if we want to call it Larry David-esque, but it's very in the moment and situational. It's very much like we're eating lunch and there's some weird shit happening and I'm giving commentary, or I'm watching something and I'm like, holy shit. And then I go off. And so that's what I want to be showing more with this show. And it is going to be more reaction based because yeah, just the structured show doesn't lend itself to that. And I think that's where the personality actually comes in, because that's where my sense of humor and things come in. It comes in with the reaction. It's not going to come in from like me sitting down and like thinking about, the different points of, how to grow a business. It's going to come in when I'm just like literally opening up Twitter and seeing what's trending and having those off. Because that was the thing, is like, I noticed that was always interesting to me, is I was naturally giving those insights. But then also when I like Q&A the best when it comes to even like the business, giving business advice type of things or personal brand advice.
Yeah.
Q&A is where my heart's at. Like reaction is where my heart's at. I don't like, well, you and I have talked about this and I'm fine to talk about this here. Like, I don't like the webinar. Like, I don't like getting up there and giving the same structured talk all the time. Like that to me that's not interesting for me long-term at all. And so that's why this is an interesting way to just be talking and getting probably even better results, but doing it my way, like doing it in a way that works for, it's like, I don't want to go to the club. It works for me this way, like doing Q&A, doing reactions, talking about things in real time, but still, even though I'm going to be giving real time reactions, I think there are going to be things that if I need to think it through, depending on what the topic is, I take the time to do the research. I think sometimes people just like headline read and that's kind of the end of the reaction. And I'm not that way, and neither are you.
No, as I say, that's one of my biggest pet peeves. It's like I can't look at stuff on Facebook a lot I can't look at the comments, because it's like you get in there and it's so clear people didn't actually read the article, and it's like, you're incorrect. It's like, read the article and you'll see like the actual points, because the headlines are misleading or clickbaity. And yeah, you can't have, I think, a valuable conversation about that when you aren't informed or having at least like really looked into it. That's something some people do. That drives me nuts. And the same thing for you. That just does not work.
So I think we're just going to dive into some things that have kind of caught our attention this week and roll with it. So I might share my screen with you, Shannon.
Yep.
And then I guess everybody else technically. Well, first thing, let's start with this. I just want to show you the Crocs at this point. It's interesting to me from a brand perspective. Crocs, just the headline you can see, like, as demand for Crocs soars, the brand is breaking up with some longtime retailers. But Crocs have been like such a thing recently. Like, I don't know. Have you ever worn Crocs?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's different because I worked in dentistry for 10 years. So I actually got Crocs about 2 years into when I was a dental assistant. And I was like, wow, these are really comfortable. And as a healthcare provider, it's great because it's a non-porous material, so they're really easy to clean, especially in dentistry, stuff sprays or whatever. Those are easy to wipe down versus sneakers, it absorbs stuff. So I've worn them and they are really comfortable. They are not stylish. Those are not shoes I would like ever. I wore them at the office. So, that was it.
Balenciaga unveils new Crocs collab. So this is going to be on video, so we'll pull it up. But if not, Google it. They are stiletto clogs.
Like there's so
I want to see what they're saying. So I'm looking at this Complex article.
I was like, there's so many. I have so many.
I mean, these are so ugly. I know that I want to see if it says how much they're going to be.
And well, my other biggest thing, anybody who has worn heels, which both of us, but whoever else, anybody's worn heels, if they're too big, you slide down into the toe and it's really uncomfortable. Crocs are not meant to be tight shoes. Those clogs, like they're kind of loose around your toes. I feel like you put those on, you're going to be constantly like sliding into them. I'm like, that doesn't look comfortable even. So it's like,
I think I've talked to you about this, but so I did have a pair of Crocs. I bought Crocs, even though like even then they weren't cute. But when I was working, actually when I'd met Hachi, so this had to be like 2006-ish, 2007. I had them like when I was sitting in the law office. And you know how it has that material on the bottom? My feet, this is really probably going to be gross for everybody, but like my feet get super sweaty. That's just like a thing. Like for whatever reason, like the rest of me isn't like overly sweaty, but like the bottoms of my feet really are. So like I can't wear Crocs in general.
they don't
Like,
breathe. Yeah, they don't breathe at all. I mean, I have the same problem like when I wore them. They're plastic shoes. Like,
yeah, so I would like fly out of these, but they're hideous. But I'm curious, like what, let me see. We were inspired. I just want to read some of these. We were inspired by Crocs and we work with them on a Balenciaga reinterpretation. We'll see if, okay, so told French, the clogs are the world's comfiest shoe. With the first collab, so they're going to be the $850 platform clogs had reportedly sold out before even being readily available in stores. So while Crocs, it says, already offers heel support and wedges and has previously sold some platform clogs, this is the first time they've seen anything like this. And I feel like this definitely came from, well, one, it came from the pandemic and people wanting like this, this new comfort level. But
but
I don't know if you knew this. I'm super in. We'll be talking about this a lot. We'll be talking about celebrity culture a decent amount because
yeah,
that's something I've been studying forever. And celebrities have such a, now kind of going into this influencer culture, have such an influence. There's so many people that have an influence on the things that we buy and the things that we do and the things that we think are cool. And
well,
and yeah, and I know, yeah, that celebrities, there are two, I don't know if you know this. So there have been at least two celebrity Crocs collaborations that sold out immediately, basically, like with Bad Bunny and Justin Bieber. And it's like these big names are wearing these Crocs. I think I saw somebody on TikTok got sent some Crocs from like Diplo. Like this is like it's reached the pop like A-list, A-list
so
musician level.
so here's some thoughts that I'm having on this. One, Crocs already had heels, like the wedges, and some of them are actually cute, and they just have that footbed material, so they're comfortable, but they look like normal, like sandal wedges. Those are okay. I would wear those. But these, I'm like, why would you take the clogs and put a heel on them? I'm like, why not wear the other cute Crocs that are heels? That I get. But that's why it's so funny to me. And like you said, the influencer culture, the thing is that if this weren't coming from like a celebrity or whatever, people would see this and they'll think they're ugly. But because like the celebrity says they're cool, then everybody wants to follow. And that comes down to a lot of what we talk about on the show with influence.
Things have to hit at the right time because like Balenciaga is a huge,
Yeah.
like that's a luxury brand. And listen, people, they probably are only making a limited amount. Only so many people can probably afford that. But that's also a collector's, depending on who you are, that's a collector's item. So at
Yeah.
the end of the day, people be like, oh, this came out, like I have access to that. That's one of those things. But like, and we'll just talk about this really quickly. I'm always interested. We talk about the things that like pop off and that are a
Yeah.
true hit that are like, okay, like Crocs, like these people are wearing it and it became a thing.
Mhm.
I don't know if you know anything about like what's going on with like a Triller, for example, which is kind of a, I don't know what we want to call it. Triller's like kind of like a knockoff of, I don't want to call it a knockoff of TikTok, but it's like a TikTok
Mhm.
competitor. And basically they did like a Jake Paul fight recently, and we're doing a bunch of other things with all of these major celebrities invested in it.
Mhm.
And it's not popping off. Like it's
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like you literally have all these names under the sun. And that's why some of these people, and like a lot of celebrities, invest in things that don't work or they promote things that don't work. And this is kind of one of those things where it's like,
Fire
it's always
festival.
interesting to see what Well, yeah, but it's interesting to but that didn't not that actually people showed up for it. The
That's
fire
true.
festival itself was a dumpster fire. So that's one of those things where it's like you can get people, it's like, what's the thing that takes off? You still need the product. And I think that,
Yeah.
for example, the problem with the Triller, it's like, even though these people are huge, a lot of the people who are backing, let's say, a Triller at the time or over whenever, and
Mhm.
have been investing in it, they aren't actually spending the time there. They're not actually wearing, basically using the product. And so it's one of those things where people are like, okay, well, that's great that you're promoting them and they paid you whatever amount of money, but they're not using it. They're still like on TikTok or they're still using these other things. So I just like to pay attention to what everyone's behind and then doesn't like it kind of falls through and kind of what's
Yeah.
taken off. And the thing with Crocs though is also like, so those were never really cool. They were always good for like medical and dental things, but everything that's kind of old becomes new again. Like we're seeing all the 90s stuff right now, like all the 90s jeans, all of the things that, I mean, you've been joking that we should, I definitely need to go to my parents' house and dig into the closet and pull out of that 30-year, whatever,
Yeah.
20, whatever that cycle is, 20-year cycle. And actually, we were cracking up the other day. If you guys don't know what Frankie B jeans are, when I went to, yeah, I don't even know if I can show that picture. Like my ass crack's just out, but I put them on and it's technically like I'm technically actually the same size. Like that would be the right pant size for me. And I was like, I sent Shannon the picture. Don't know if I can post that anywhere. It's absurd. Like those pants though, like I definitely want to like clean out my closet and kind of put things up on like Poshmark and do all of that stuff. But like those pants, I think we were talking about like I need to save. Like I can't sell those pants. Like I want to keep them because that's just like that was like a moment in time.
It's so funny because at the time it was like those were so in style, and now looking at them, we're like, how the hell did you ever like? Did we ever wear these? These were the ones for
Yeah.
anybody who doesn't know what these are. These are like the Britney Spears jeans, like with a 2-inch inseam. Like it was those ones that were really popular that had like the shortest rise, not inseam, but
Like
the
I like
so low
I'm a
cut.
slave for you style pants.
Yeah,
That's actually it. Like if you watch that video or like when she had like actually she wasn't wearing jeans on stage for that MTV, but that's how low like everything was just so low. And now everything's like 11, especially because everybody's into the I'm like a mid-rise girl. I wear high-waisted sometimes. And most things it's hard to find anything that's like mid-rise anymore because everything's either super high-rise or now you're seeing some people kind of swing back to like the low. But most people can't. I don't know how people were wearing it then even.
no, that's what I'm saying. I don't know.
It's
Looking
a
back,
hard look
when you
to it's a hard look to pull off.
no, when you send that picture, that it was just like you said, it wasn't like somebody trying to squeeze back into old jeans. They're too small. Like those were the right size. They're just so low cut. That
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
don't
how do we wear is like, how do we wear stuff like that?
that seems like something that will I know those types of jeans were coming back. I don't know if Frankie B's are, but I saw like Juicy was coming back. There's a bunch of things like that.
Now we just have to wait for Jean Co to show back up.
Well, you see a lot of like raver type pants coming back
Yeah.
too. Okay, so I know you want to talk about this. I'm going to show the
Yeah.
picture. A lot of people were talking about Emrata. There's a picture of her. It's on was the day before her birthday, holding her baby, and people were joking that it was like she was holding him like they were like she's holding him like she would hold like an expensive bag or like she's posing with whatever. Um, and what I thought was interesting is so she posted and it's a carousel. So she's posing, then she's posing again, then she's kind of picking the baby back up, and then she's like hugging him and supporting the head. And so she actually shut off the comments from the time of recording. This was 3 days ago that she posted it. She turned off the comments on this because she was getting so much shit about not supporting the baby's neck. I actually really like her. I'd love to interview her. I think she's done a lot of interesting things with her brand. But as far as this picture goes, you had a different reaction than I did to it.
So yeah, the thing that was interesting to me. So Brittany and I were before this. We were just when she showed me this picture initially. We have very different experiences, Brittany and I, around kids.
Yeah.
I've been around kids like my entire life. So I know that a baby needs his neck supported. I started babysitting when I was 11, and I've been around like children a lot. But I know so many parents who, when they have their first kid, like if you haven't been around kids extensively, like some people just don't know that infants need their head supported. You know, and I know you said, Brittany, that's the one thing you're like.
Basically, my take on this, it's, listen, like she probably looked away. And I think you and I were talking about this before. Neither of us are moms, you know, yet or whatever, but moms get so much shit. Like I feel like you can do, if you're a mom and you post online, you cannot be right. Like I just think that there's so,
yeah, there's
like she wasn't gonna win no matter what. Like I do think a lot of people are, you know, very supportive of you know, when people post pictures of their kids or whatever. But if you're actually doing anything that, I don't know, there's so much mom shaming. I think that's like that next level. Like you
yeah,
probably get a lot of shit in general, but then when you're a mom, you get so much more. So when I saw this, did immediately, the first thing I thought, I was like, oh my gosh, why isn't she supporting his head? Like, why isn't she supporting his neck? And then the things on Twitter, like this tweet, Emrata gonna kill this baby, has 35.4K hearts. Emrata holds her baby the way a hot girl would hold a baguette. Yeah, so
and that's
yeah, Emrata holding her baby like a beach towel and then turning off comments. What I thought, so one thing, the only thing I also have not, I have not been around babies like Shannon has. I've spent like no time with children, really. But that's the only thing that I did know or do know is like you support the head, like you got to support the neck and whatever. So when I saw this, the only baby knowledge I thought of and had is like, oh, why isn't she supporting his neck? So I thought that she shut off the comments.
yeah.
But what I thought was interesting is that she has not deleted this photo. She's left it up. She's not going to delete the photo. I don't think she did shut off the comments, and and I saw people commenting about it in the other posts.
Yeah.
But just leaving it up.
I think that's smart for a couple of reasons. Well, one, what happens a lot of times is that when people have a post, it doesn't get interpreted right, or it's actually blatantly wrong. We've seen both. People get negative feedback and then they delete it and then they get criticized for taking it down. And part of it is like, you know what? Sometimes the comments are relevant and you want somebody else to be able to learn from the experience. So other people, it's like taking it down isn't necessarily the best thing, and you erase valuable comments for people. So just leaving it up, I think, is valuable, and it's just owning it. So you may turn off comments, you don't have to deal with more, but leaving it up is good. And plus, frankly, the other thing, like I said, there's times when there is a post that you know is wrong, like when you put it up. In this case, you just can't judge because maybe she literally was just one of those people who didn't know that thing about a baby's neck. Like it's not as common. Most people know that one, but there are people who don't. And I've seen it across education levels, like income levels, you know, like there's just things you don't know. And the interesting that was interesting to me, Brittany, was that literally just last night, I was looking up this whole thing about having like night nannies or like the newborn care specialist, because like, I know for myself, I do not do well on sleep deprivation. When I have kids, I'm going to need somebody to help out, because if I'm only getting 2-hour periods of sleep a night, I will be a zombie. But what I was reading and I didn't know is that a lot of these specialists, like night nannies, they're actually trained for infants. And part of it, it's not just taking care of the kid, they're teaching the parents how to do those things. Like, how do you give your baby a bath? There's just so many things that first-time parents, you just have no experience with it, you know? And so it's like some of it you have to be taught. And when people judge you and you don't know any better, it's like, that's really harsh, you know? Like, so I don't know. For me personally,
I definitely have two things to say about this. One, like maybe he was looking like at her, and then just during the course of the photo, he turned his head. Like, we're basing this off a total photo assumption.
Yep.
Like that's the thing, is people take that opportunity to just like latch on real fast.
Yep.
And I like what you said about actually, I want to come back to what you said about people deleting things or not deleting things. But the other thing I want to say is I have a friend recently who had a baby, and he was like, it's literally like the only thing on earth. It's like so important to take care of children and all of those things and raise them right. And it's a human, but basically like you get out of the hospital and they're just like, here's your human. And there's no, it's like you're now in charge of this life. Like, good luck. Like there's no anything like, like, good luck. Like that's kind of the end of it. Like,
yeah,
it's a huge responsibility that literally nobody prepares you for.
No, they don't. Like I said, unless you happen to have been around a lot of kids, like for people who don't know me, I grew up in a really religious background. I was very religious. I'm not anymore, but like, again, you're around church, you're around lots of families that have kids. So I was always around it. And I like kids. So I learned those things, but you don't know those things off the bat. And if you haven't been around kids, I'm like, frankly, for myself, if I didn't have that experience, I'd have like no clue. Another thing, like you said, I also have friends who've had babies that literally could lift their head up within like a week. It's not common, but that happens. Her kid could have a strong neck. And like you said, he just happened to look away, but it looks really bad in the picture, like the angle. And yeah, I think a lot of, like you said, I'm like, I think people jump on things sometimes without really knowing the full details. And you have to be careful about that, you
So I
know?
can't assume that I like what you said about that's a conversation that I think a lot of people have, or like, especially if you're building a brand, and we've seen this happen a few times, like whether to delete the post or leave the post up. I don't know if she's making an example or not, or whatever, just, just like better not to delete it. We don't know.
Yeah.
But I do think that's interesting sometimes, like when does it make sense to delete the post versus keeping the post up? So I don't know if I know it's very dependent on the situation and the
Yeah.
level of like offensiveness depending on what it is.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you, and we've seen a few times when it's done right and it's left up and people actually do learn something from it, people can appreciate that. We saw, was it Rachel Hollis's was not, I'd say that's an example. Again, now we have to go into, I guess, who that is, but there was an example recently that was not handled well. That was not, I don't know if did she delete anything, but
I think she took it down eventually, not for a couple of days, but I feel like it's gone now, but I'd have to check.
but then you see how people react where it's like there was actually so much value depending on what the issue is. There's sometimes so much value. There's so much value in those comments in terms of education
Yep.
as to why what she was posting was not okay by any stretch of the imagination, that taking it down felt insulting to
I
people.
was gonna say there's a couple aspects, and I've seen that with a lot of different topics, but part of it is, like you said, a lot of those comments are educational. And when people are responding, I mean, one, you get responses that are just straight out critical or not very nice and not helpful. But other people will take the time to actually think it through and like type out like a really clear explanation of why something was harmful or hurtful. And so, like you said, taking it down then is like a second slap in the face, like, well, you just put all this energy into trying to help. I think the better thing, and I know Twitter, you can't edit posts, Facebook or Instagram, you could, but the ones where you can edit, I've also seen people like the way to do it is edit it and in your caption say, I'm not going to take this down because there were valuable comments and feedback. I'm learning. So I'm sorry I made this comment or this thing came across this way or whatever. I'm trying to do my best. But you leave it up so that you don't delete that feedback. Twitter's a little harder because you can always quote tweet yourself and put a new comment on it. So it's like you said, I think when people have spent time and energy trying to educate and help people understand, it's rude to take that down when it could be helpful to other people.
It's also kind of platform dependent. You don't
Yeah.
see that kind of, I'd say you don't see that kind of issue as much on Twitter as you do on Instagram.
Yeah.
I think that's more of an issue on Instagram. But with Twitter, even people are screenshotting the tweet. I don't know. People are quick with Twitter.
Oh, you can't, anything you put up, there's no real deleting it because it's like, we're talking about Rachel. Okay, she takes down the post, but guess what? Other people have screenshotted it and done reaction things or talked about it on their own videos. It doesn't go away. So deleting it, it's not like that actually hides it. Just makes you look like you're not wanting to deal with it. So yeah, people are
Yeah,
fast.
that's a whole other conversation too, with the deleting it and addressing it. And I think we've entered an era, and you and I have talked about this, and I think I talked about this on an episode, but I'm going to keep coming back to it, why it's so important to have people in your life. And especially as we're all personal brands, whatever, a lot of people are prone to just like sharing their thoughts or whatever off the cuff, and maybe they shouldn't always be sharing all the things that they're sharing.
Yeah.
But if you do have a team that is posting for you or whatever, you're the face of a brand. A lot of people have these teams. You need to empower the people who work with you to
Yep.
be able to push back on you, or to be able to say like, hey, I don't know if we should post this, or like to be able to say no. And I think people just get to this point where they're like, no, like I am the brand, I am the voice, like whatever I say goes. they kind of build this culture of fear and or just yes men or yes women, yes folks. And then people just do, they do it because they don't want to get fired or whatever, don't want to push back, but you need those people. Like that's I just see that happening more and more. And I've talked about this over and
Yeah.
over and over again. And then you end up surrounding yourself with people who don't say no to you. You end up surrounding yourself with people who don't say no to you, and you're kind of insulated then, especially in 2020, just in general, you get insulated from I think people do this anyway in their own world. They create their own bubble and then they build this big audience and they put something out and everybody's like, "Oh, that's so great." And then it ends up being really problematic.
I think the interesting thing too is that I think the people who end up surrounding themselves with yes people, beyond the fact, like you said, that they have a fear then of coming to you and saying, hey, this is problematic, so you're going to get shut down. The thing I find extra, like just even more infuriating is that when those people put something out and it gets like taken negatively, they throw their team under the bus. They're like, oh,
That's
my team shouldn't have posted that or this or that. And I'm like, well, you don't let them tell you ahead of time saying like this is a problem. So it's like you can't have it both ways, I feel like.
Yeah, and here's the thing is as a business owner, and I feel like most if you speak to people who run their business responsibly or people who should be giving that kind of advice, just in general, like if you are the business owner, you have to accept responsibility for everything that happens in your business.
Yep.
Everything. Like it's that radical responsibility idea. Like you've set the tone, you've set the culture, you yes, there might be like a bad actor, a bad apple, but at the end of the day, like you have to own that mistake.
Yeah.
Like you do. Like I'm trying to think if there's maybe some scenario where like that's the worst kind of that's not leadership at all. That's literally the opposite of leadership to be like, oh well, that my social media manager put it up. It's not me. It wasn't me. Like that's the most offensive. Like that's not from a place of power at all. That's not someone I'd want leading me in any, not that they would be leading me, but that's one of those things where I'm like, that's such a turnoff. Why would I take advice? Can you imagine these, some of these people are very big in the personal development world and in the advice giving space. Do you really want to take advice from someone who's just really ready to throw anybody under, like, oh,
Yeah.
it's not my fault. No responsibility. Like, I didn't do that. Like, that was done without my knowledge. It's like, okay, that's cool. But like, what are you going to do about it? Like, I don't know. That's so, there were, it's just gross to me. I don't even like know what to say. It makes me speechless. And it made me speechless when I know we're talking about a specific instance, but I've seen it across the board with a few
Yeah.
instances. And every time I'm like, oh my gosh, like don't these people have friends or I know they have PR people because they've written books and they've written all these other things. Like what's happening right now? Why is nobody it like literally admit I'm speechless about it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's, I think the other thing too that I think, like you said, I mean, one, yeah, I wouldn't want to work with somebody that, treats people that way or that throws things under the bus or won't take responsibility. Cause like you said, I'm like, that's not the style I want to emulate. That's not the type of person I want to be. Like either not taking responsibility or if they actually blame their team, that's for me, that's also a respect issue. I'm like, hey, these are people who have, you don't like throw the people who support you under the bus. Like, I just feel like that's a human respect issue. But yeah, just in general, not taking responsibility for things like, look, nobody likes to make mistakes. It's uncomfortable fessing up to a mistake or owning it. Like that's an uncomfortable thing, but it shows maturity and integrity by doing it. I think that's the other thing. It feels like a lack of integrity when people just won't take responsibility for something that is ultimately there. Like you said, any business leader, ultimately, you're the one in charge and you're going to be responsible for it. And I feel like it's a lack of integrity to step up and own it.
Yeah, I know we're going to come back to this situation time and time again because there are always people trying to put blame on other people and
Yeah.
in every realm. But yeah, that situation was not a good one. And speaking of, well, we're going to talk about Twitter. You mentioned not being able to change Twitter. Let me share with you this. Twitter is introducing Twitter Blue, which is Twitter's first ever subscription offering. And so I don't think you're going to be able to edit, but it says Meet Twitter Blue. It says we'll be rolling out our first iteration in Australia and Canada. So there's going to be a bookmarks folder. I don't know how much this is. I want to see how much it is, but a bookmarks folder, which I think that would be helpful because I
Well,
do
is that kind
bookmark
of
a lot
like,
of things.
I'm trying to figure out if that's like kind of like highlights or something like on Instagram, like if you're able to put your own tweets in there, or is it
It's not
just
highlights, it's the save feature
save
on
feature?
Instagram.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, undo tweet. So this is the as close as they're gonna get probably to the edit because they seem to be really against the editing. So it says undo tweet, typo, forgot to tag someone, preview and revise your tweet before it goes live. With undo tweet, you can set a customizable timer of up to 30 seconds, which honestly, it's long, but that's not that long. Oh, to
Oh, that's
click
like
undo.
detailed.
Yeah, to click
Like,
undo before the tweet, reply,
yeah.
or thread you've sent to your timeline. Correct mistakes easily by previewing what your tweet will look like before. So I think this helps, but this isn't the same because sometimes I don't catch it right away like that. Like it's like you like at least for typos, like I don't really post stuff that I just delete, but there's so many times where I'm like, shit, I didn't notice the typo because it
Yep.
was so, and I'm
I've done
pretty
it.
careful. I'm kind of like crazy about, we're both crazy about like typos and grammar and stuff. So like really drives me nuts, but you like don't see it until it's in the timeline and
Yep.
you're like, oh crap.
The worst is
So
it's one thing when you catch it fairly fast and you haven't gotten engagement yet, because then I'm like, okay, I'll just delete it.
yeah, then I delete it.
But I'm like, yeah, but once it has comments, you're like, well,
Yeah.
oh well.
Once it gets the like, you're like, well, I guess this is it.
Yeah, this is
Okay,
that feature
reader
is
mode.
really, as I say, that just
Oh, go
reminds me
ahead.
of the Google unsend. That's what that is. It's not really an edit. It's like,
I don't think they're going to give us an edit. I don't think they're about the edit,
yeah, I
but
don't.
everybody wants it. That's one of those things like with the, I I don't know what the full rationale is from Twitter's end. Maybe it's just about having that conversation and they don't want you to be able to change things, even though you could see edit history. I think they can incorporate it where let's say like an Instagram doesn't want to give the option to go back to chronological feed. That's a
Yeah.
that's a pure business decision.
Yeah.
That's different to me. I don't understand I don't fully understand. Yeah. Because I know maybe like if it can say edited or have different versions, like I understand people saying again, like it's like everything continues to exist online. So if you did it and then you edited it, people probably have screenshotted it. I understand if people are like, okay, we don't want you to edit something. Let's say something was controversial and you edit it and you're like, oh, it was never there. If they do something where you can see the different versions,
Yeah.
I think that would be fine.
I think
I don't know.
my only thought on that is that the thing is that, let's say somebody posts something, it's problematic, whatever, and I quote tweet it and I add commentary. But then when they go back, if they change their edits, it's going to show up in my quote tweet. And then sometimes it makes the person look bad afterwards. Like I could look bad because of what I said. And it's like I'm criticizing somebody, but then the post that other people are seeing on my feed, they're like, well, that's not problematic, because most people aren't going to then look at my thing and say, oh, this was edited. Let me see what this person's original thing was, so they're just seeing the updated version. So that's my only thinking, is that they could be doing it to protect other people, like when somebody else comments on your stuff, so you don't end up making them look different. Or like conversely,
going from a perspective from like sometimes there's things where it's like maybe from behind the scenes from a tech perspective, it would just be a real pain in the ass.
yeah,
like,
I don't think, yeah, that wouldn't be. Yeah. I was gonna say, I think actually the opposite, the bigger issue is if somebody posts something good. Let's say you posted something really inspirational and I go in and just reshare it. I retweet it. If that person then goes in and edits it and makes it look really bad, then it looks like I'm like what if you posted something nice, I retweet it, and then, or not you, but somebody else goes in and then changes it to some really racist thing, and it looks like then I shared some racist comment, So I could see that potentially being a thing too. But again, that's probably not a likely situation. So
it would be interesting to hear from someone inside Twitter.
Yeah, what they're
like what the deal is. So then reader mode, I'm just curious how much this is. Subscribers will also get access to perks such as customizable app icons for their device's home screen, fun color themes. Okay, as Twitter Blue subscriber, you get these for the price of, okay, this is in Canadian dollars, $3.49 Canadian dollars, or $4.49 Australian dollars. So I guess that's not.
No, it's probably like, I want to say that's like $3 US or something.
Would you pay for this?
I don't know. That's why I'm like, probably not, because most of those features, I mean, the The only thing in there that would be useful for me is the folders
Saved.
for saved stuff. Because Facebook and Instagram, I use that a lot. I have a lot of different collections and things. That does make it easier for me to find things down the road. That's probably the only thing on there. Everything else on there, I don't really, for me personally, is like not that valuable. I'm like, wow, I can change the color of the app. Like, oh, no. I'm like, why would I, that's not worth it to me.
Yeah, I don't think I think the only thing that's interesting is is the folders, because I do use it on Instagram, like you said, and I use it in the business. So, but like if I was just a casual user and not in the business that we're in,
Yeah.
then I don't know if I would pay for that.
Yeah. I don't think, like I said, that's the only thing I would pay for. But even so, while it's a useful feature, I don't, even knowing that I like using those, I probably wouldn't pay for it. I'm like, it's not that important to me. So that's something I'm going to pay for.
And that's another interesting thing. It's like, what are you willing to pay for? I'm willing to pay, like whatever, like I'm willing to pay for other things that are more expensive than that, but it's like, what's the value to you? So that'll be an interesting experiment. It's interesting that they're rolling it out in Canada and Australia, and we'll see how it goes. I'm sure they'll adjust and get feedback. We'll just keep going then for a little bit more, because I know I had a few more things. They're selling those the fake COVID cards.
Yeah.
So it says Etsy is profiting from fake COVID vaccination IDs and misinformation merchandise. I know there was stuff on what'd she say? Scroll. There's definitely some on Amazon and Facebook Marketplace. I was actually talking to a friend yesterday who said that she was in Greece, that she just saw tons of bad Photoshop. Like there's just no standardization of that. But like that's no surprise that we're gonna see this happening. I guess until there's some kind of actual proof that's standardized.
I was gonna say what they need is an app or something where doctors can log in and verify that you got it. Like the user can't go in and say, "Oh, I'm vaccinated." It's like something where you can log in that's doing that. But you have to opt into that. Obviously, that doctors couldn't just do that on their own. You'd have to opt in. But
there's
like you said, there's no way to prevent. It's such a basic form. I mean, like you look at California driver's license, they have all those holograms and things that make it really hard to counterfeit. This is literally just typed, like printed on a piece of cardboard or whatever, like a cardstock. Anybody can make that. It's like the fact that they were even using those to begin with, and that's the thing, is like silly. Like I'm like, they must have anticipated that this was gonna happen.
Yeah, so I saw this Go2Vax. It's go2vax.com. I can just share my screen.
Yeah.
I haven't signed up for it yet. But again, it depends like who's gonna take, because I have my paper one. I took a picture of it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is get your free, secure, verified vaccine passport on your phone. And then I think they said the way it works, so we confirm and validate the identity of the person submitting the vaccine card to make sure they're receiving the right person's getting the certificate. Mm-hmm. Then they verify the information and the personal information. They probably take your like ID or whatever it is, passport, image verification. We use artificial intelligence and train medical professionals to verify the validity of the vaccine card photo submitted. I don't know how they do that. And then state level record validation. We use state immunization records to verify the information.
See, and that, I think that last piece is the part that's really the important piece, because those records, like it's not like, I mean, unless somebody's hacking into the state records and like adding names, which is unlikely. I mean, hopefully the state system has better security than that. But that's helpful because then it actually is verified. Because trying to look at a picture and know if like somebody faked it, how are you going to do that?
And honestly, even with like the negative tests and things, I know people Photoshop that. Like, I don't know how that's working because I haven't traveled out of the country yet since all this is going on. Hopefully soon, but I'm sure I'm going to need to get whatever negative tests, even though I've been vaccinated, get whatever negative tests before entering certain countries. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do they even verify that any of that's real?
Yeah,
they can't, I'm sure. So but this is an option. I'm sure they're probably trying to work with the government. This is such a nightmare. This is for government, but if people do want to get this thing, I'm not associated with this in any way, but I might do it. Go get vax.com/vax. Yes. For the record, I know you are, and I mean, I am too. It's like, get the vaccine if you're able to, and like it's safe for you, like through your doctor or whatever. Like,
So
I'm pro. I'm
it's
pro getting it.
I feel like you and I have had this conversation a lot about the importance of integrity. You and I are both very big on that. I think honesty, integrity, that's really important. And for me, I think part of the thing that really bothers me about this is that it's like, it's one thing because there's people who are immunocompromised or have cancer or these different things, they can't get the vaccine. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. And you should be able to say like, yeah, I didn't get the vaccine because I literally can't, like medically. For everybody else, I'm like, look, if you're one of those people and you're anti-vaccines or you just don't want to get it, own it. I'm like, if you want to do that, fine, but you have to fucking own it. Don't pretend that you're vaccinated. I just feel like for me, that's just so dishonest and really off-putting. I'm like, tell people, be like, no, I don't believe in vaccines. Fine, own that shit. Because you know what? A lot of people don't because they know they're going to get negative feedback. But it's like pretending you're vaccinated is not the way to go in my mind.
So the issue from what I would imagine, like, this is, I'm still a lawyer. So the lawyer in me is always like, okay, well, I'm always putting myself in other people's heads.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I guess the thing is, if they can't enter, here's the thing, people, just like anything, like you need a driver's license to drive. You can't fake that. That requires all these other things. But I think people who maybe don't, or like anti-vax, or like, oh, I want to go, they maybe get the COVID test, but they wouldn't get the vaccine, but they still want to go to the whatever the event is or whatever the thing is. And instead of kind of accepting that that's the case, because they're like, oh, again, like, I don't understand that, like, unless you have an actual medical exemption, I don't understand fully that stance. And so therefore, they're like, oh, well, I want to go to Greece, or I want to go to wherever, I want to go to this concert, but I'm not going to vaccinate myself in order to go.
But see, and that's the thing. And people
that's where they would do it.
Yeah. And then to me, that's where that integrity piece comes in. Because it's like, well, these are the requirements. So either get the vaccine and you can go to those things, or you don't. Yeah, you can choose not to get the vaccines, but the consequences are you can't go to a lot of these things, or there are places you can't travel. So
and I think that's the thing, is people think that that's not fair, but at the same time, I forgot who was making this point. I think preschoolers, or to go to schools, you need to get certain vaccines. Like there's always rules for certain things.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, yeah, you don't have to get the vaccine, but if you don't, you're gonna have to deal with the fact that there are things that you're not gonna be able to do. It's up to businesses, because it's totally their choice to say, hey, we're only doing this if you're vaccinated. And it's like, you may not think it's fair, but it's like, yeah, it is. It's fair to everybody else who you're putting at risk. If you're like carrying like COVID or any other thing like that, it's like, it's fair to those people, because it's fair to say, hey, we're only letting people in who are going to make sure they take public health seriously.
And there's just so much, this is like such a deeper conversation around this. Like, I was debating even whether we wanted to even bring that up, or whether I wanted to bring it up, because it's like, there are so many rabbit holes to go down with the misinformation and like what people think and about vaccinations. And it's such like a hot button topic that shouldn't be a hot button topic, in my opinion. Like, but again, like, this is like a totally different thing. I think people, it's like, you make your choice, but then I'm sure people have these like intense reasons why they believe that they shouldn't be forced to do this, and that this is against their rights, or whatever what have you. This goes way deeper than this conversation could possibly.
No, and the interesting thing is that I think comes from education, because I agree. Like, I think people have valid reasons or things they're concerned about, but the problem is that our education system's not great. People don't necessarily understand how vaccines work, and they're not getting their questions answered. So it's like, the bigger thing is making
And they
sure
don't trust the people answering their questions.
exactly. And so there's like this hesitancy, and I understand that if you don't think it's safe, like sure, if I thought something wasn't safe, I wouldn't want to give it to my kids or myself. But the
Oh
problem
yeah.
is the misinformation and people don't know better. And I think that is just that is not a that's a reflection on society and our education and our healthcare policies, just like then it is that's a judgment on that. You know, we need to be doing a better job of helping people be informed and have the right information, you know, or making sure that people talk in a way that people can trust, because you know people who have historically suffered at the hands of the medical profession or something, you know, they don't trust those people. So there's a lot of other, like you said, issues that come into play, like, well, you have to reestablish trust with these communities that have historically not had access to the right care or information, and that's going to take time. But that's, I think, where a lot of those issues come in, is that we haven't addressed those things.
Yeah, and then who got the vaccine for, it's like exactly, you're 100% right on all of those things, because yeah, the information's coming from these certain groups of people. And even now, like for me, like you and I are both vaccinated, so obviously like we still have the ability to contract it. It now will not cause death or won't be that severe, but it's just one of those things where I don't want to be that person that's like, okay, well, like I'm okay now. Like I know I'm good and the people I love are good. So then I don't care. Cause I think that's what ends up happening a lot of times. And I'm very, I mean, I don't know, maybe we will dig into politics a little bit. That's the beauty of this show. But like just for me, like my stance in general has always been very kind of libertarian, I guess. Like it's like do whatever you need to do or do whatever you want, like especially when if it comes to anything personal life wise, like I don't give a shit what you do, like when it comes to anything like that, it's like as long as you're not hurting anybody, like you do you, like I'm good with that. But when it comes to something like this has been interesting because I really had to think about it. When it comes to public health, it's like, okay, well, yeah, like you care that it's safe and you do care that it's safe and all of these things, but like who do you trust and is it, and like what sources do you read? And you know, my father's a physician and it's like you're listening to these people, and I don't know, just the misinformation so wild. I think I want to have a guest on. There's people who like study how the misinformation
Oh
spread,
yeah.
but that's a whole problem that needs to be solved at a higher level. And I think just government is fucked up in general. Like it's so like everything's so inefficient. Even in our like even just thinking about the businesses I've worked in prior to this, and also even just this business, it's like
Yeah.
the bigger you get and then the more like things that you need to go through and the hoops you need to jump through. I just don't know how anybody can make government efficient, but that's again a totally different conversation.
Yeah, that's a different
That's like way bigger than anything. So now we're going
yeah.
to skip to a totally
Yes.
different type of topic. I'm like, if you're over that, like, or if you want to hear more about that, let us know. The other two things I wanted to hit on, you can tell me what you think. So influencer burnout or just burnout in general, and then also what's going on with Trisha Paytas and frenemies. Which one do you want to talk about?
Burnout, I think.
Okay, so burnout. New York Times just put out this article the other day. Young creators are burning out and breaking down. Many people, this is about related to TikTok, but I think this is just in general. It says many people have found fame on TikTok are struggling with mental health issues. There have been kind of all sorts of comments across the board where people are like, oh, well, then just get a job, or oh, this is like a whatever. This isn't just like a Gen Z issue. I think content creation as a job and just entrepreneurs in general, and I think 2020 in general, like burnout is just a real thing that everyone this is just like one angle of the burnout mental health conversation. This is just like it's a very valid take, like it's true what this article is about, but like burnout is happening, I think, right now across the board. Burnout's happening with moms, and I get what they're saying with the content creation, because this starts with like spending hours shooting, editing, storyboarding, engaging with fans, setting up brand deals, balancing the many other responsibilities that come with being a successful content creator have taken a toll. You know, so many Gen Z influencers who found fame in the last year are burned out. I mean, that's just that's going to be this is like the conversation going forward, in my opinion, and
Mhm.
not just in my opinion. I think this is the conversation. We've just been talking about mental health a lot. I know I've been talking about it on Beyond Influential, and you and I have been wanting to talk about this just more publicly in general because I've this year I definitely like experienced true burnout. I work hard. I've always worked hard. I've always kind of been on the cusp
Mhm.
just over the years of like teetering on it, but then like coming back from it, being able to like either travel or do things that were enough to kind of relieve the pressure or the stress enough. But I just think that there's certain, I think at least for me, the 2020 compounding with working on certain aspects and then having certain outlets kind of taken away
Yep, that was
was
what I
just
was gonna say. I think burnout's been there, like you said, forever, and people struggle with it a bit. In the past, historically, you could travel, or even just like saying, "Hey, let's go to a movie tonight," or just doing something else. But because of last year and like quarantine and everybody staying home, you don't have that division anymore. Before it's like, okay, I'm working, but I'm going to go out. Like now it's like, well, what do we do? You're just sitting at your house. Your work is there because you're working from home, and you don't have, like you said, the other options that you would normally do to relieve stress. And so you end up thinking about work all the time because what else are you going to think about? You can't go out with friends, you can't do these things. And so I think that last year just really amplified all those issues. So people who were struggling with burnout, or like you said, you're always on the cusp, you could manage, but last year just tilted it off. And it's like, I think it just magnified, it's like literally just holding up a light to the problem. And then everybody's like, oh shit, everybody's struggling with this now. But I think that thing was like the precipitating factor and bringing it into the conversation and having people actually like publicly talk about it now because it's become so widespread.
and I think in the US we're particularly prone to that because we are such a like
Productivity
somebody
culture.
said this to me, internalized capitalism. It's like you get so rewarded for the hustle, like working hard and being busy. People idealize it and people idolize it, whether even the people who talk about like, oh, it's good to set boundaries and take rest or whatever. There's a level of like being impressed that people have with the grind. Like
Yeah,
that's sexy in US culture, and that's not,
no, it's
I don't
totally
think
not
that's going to
healthy.
change. It's not healthy. It's not healthy at all, but I don't know if it's fully going anywhere, but these conversations are happening more publicly. And I think at least with content creators, so said in March, Charlie D'Amelio, and I know I saw this interview, TikTok's biggest star with more than, she probably has more than this, 117 million followers, said she lost passion for posting content. And I think
Yep.
that's a real thing. I know we're not just talking about content in general, but yeah, the the way social platforms are and the algorithms and the way to stay relevant, people think that they need to. I know that I feel guilt, like actual guilt when I'm not posting.
Yep.
Even when I'm like, it's fine if I don't post, I still have that guilt because I know that the consistency means this and that. And I'm trying to, you're trying, people have these goals and these dreams and these aspirations and these businesses. And it is a real business, especially if you actually are a real content creator
Yep.
and like that's what you do for a living. And so it's really hard to balance that. And people like a Charlie D'Amelio have, I mean, she's what, I think she's 17 years old now, and she has, listen, this is the thing with child celebrities anyway. It's like you have now she's repped by a large talent agency. She has managers, she has PR people, she's doing the biggest things. She just likes to dance.
Yeah.
She really likes dancing and probably hanging out with her friends, but her friends are people now who I think she was talking about in that interview because she was doing it with her sister. It's like your friends are being competitive with you, or like you don't know if people want to hang out with you for clout. And I'm not saying like poor person who has all of these followers. It does suck. Like if you got like I could imagine that would suck. Like she
Well,
makes
think
a ton of
about
money and all those things. She has these, they're going to make the reality show about that family, all of these kinds of things. Just because you have those opportunities maybe she
It
just
breaks its
doesn't
own
fucking feel
brain.
like dancing like right now or doesn't want to be doing it. And it's a job at that point. But even now, like we've gotten to this point a few times where I'm like, I don't, it's like sometimes you don't feel like doing the thing that's
Yep.
expected of you. So how do you keep it fresh? How do you, we've been talking about this a lot. I'm a, like, a, I mean, I'm a workaholic. There's no getting around that. Like you're laughing. I am, right?
Like because you care about your business. Some people I think show up and they're like, okay, this is the thing I do, and then they're off. But you're like so passionate about everything that you do and everything you pursue that for you it's really hard to step away from that because you're always like, what do I want next or what do I want to do? But then it's like, yeah, it causes it's a double-edged sword. You need that passion, but it can
Yeah,
definitely
I'm constantly having ideas and again we'll talk more over time about mental health and things kind of going on and what I've been learning, but like a big part of your job helping project manage the team at this point is also helping project manage me where it's like I'm getting to the point where it's like I really need the reason people have these like morning routines and these routines at this point, like I used to think that was kind of like bullshit. Like I was like, oh, so and so's morning routine. And now I'm
yeah,
like, I need this. I'm trying out every different thing. I've been meditating over the last, we'll talk about this over the last few months very regularly. Like I've been doing the things out of necessity. Like
yeah,
I'm at the point where it's been necessary because I need to pull away. Because also when you're creating all the time, you do lose you can lose passion for it when you're creating from a place where you're not resting. Again, it was one of those things where it was fine for me to be doing I was able to sustain it before when I was living the life that I wanted to be living. And now we're finally entering a phase where I'm like, oh, I get to do stuff again. So now I'm really excited because you and I have been talking about the also just my brand in general and the fun things that we're going to be doing and kind of incorporating more of that lifestyle stuff back in because lifestyle was such a big part of my life. And then over the last year, with a lot of those things kind of not accessible, it was like, oh, I'm just kind of creating from this place of like, I don't want to be talking about this right now. And I
yeah.
think that's a thing where it's like, I know that I know this or I can talk about this, but like, I don't feel like it. People are like, oh, well, that's your job to do that. But
Yeah.
I don't think that I don't, I think that there's like it's not always your job to do that.
Yeah. I was going to say the thing that I think is interesting is that particularly with people who have an online presence, which you do, when that's your business, as soon as you start getting fans and followers and things, there very quickly becomes this expectation, like you said, of like what you do. And that is a heavy weight to carry. And I think there's something to be said for, like you said, like, just owning it and saying, you know what, I want to do the lifestyle stuff again. And it's following, like, doing what feels aligned and what feels right. And sometimes that means shaking it up. And it's like, you know what, you may have that expectation, but that is not going to work for me long term. But because of that public face, that expectation, it can be really hard and stressful breaking away from it because, like you said, you feel that pressure to like keep maintaining, but ultimately that's not sustainable and it's not healthy. And I think more people realizing that it's okay to pivot or it's okay to say, you know what, I want to talk about this thing now. Like, I think, and the more people start doing that, I think that's going to help everybody else because people say, oh, this person changed what they did, or they're talking about something different. I can do that too. I can change what I want to talk about. But you have to consciously put that effort into overcoming those negative feelings of guilt or expectation. Like you're saying, oh, I feel guilty that I didn't post. That takes literal actual effort consciously to overcome those thought patterns.
And I mean, we're probably going to talk about this more too, but it's like last week we sat down and went through the vision of the next 6 months, the next year, and we're really about to really put that into motion.
Yep.
But we needed to intentionally, there's always so many ideas and so many things that you can do, but we needed to intentionally put that down because it's so easy to just kind of keep going. And
Yep.
also, once you have built some sort of audience, people do have those expectations and frankly don't want to. There are those feelings, no matter how strong you are, or whatever, you don't want to disappoint or you want to deliver for them, or you know that they're like you build that kind of relationship. And so it's like you don't you feel responsible. And I think that was something that I never liked about and why I really don't now I'm moving away completely from any type of coaching or anything like that. I don't like the feeling of responsibility and for someone else's, you can't coach somebody and you can't teach somebody that way and be involved with somebody and be responsible for their outcomes. The person needs to be responsible for their outcomes. But if I know that that's difficult, then it's like, okay, well, I shouldn't be doing that because, that doesn't make sense for me.
Yeah.
But I think that was a big thing too, because it's like there were so many things in the business where it's like, oh yeah, these things make money, or these things could make money, and these things can do this and you can do this. And it's like, well, what do we actually want to do? What gets us excited? What will keep the stamina up? Because at the end of the day, it's like, if I'm not okay, the business isn't okay. And if we're not having a time, like, why are we doing this? Like, that's just the end of the story. And I think people don't give themselves the grace for that. And also people
Yep.
don't give themselves, I think they look at, and I know I've been kind of guilty of this myself. It's like you look at other people who are maybe who are peers or whatever, what have you, and they're not only having success in that area that you're in or whatever also, but they enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like that's their business also, and they're sticking with it and they love it and they're putting out whatever and they're doing the webinars and they're doing the things, but they like it. They love coaching. They love hosting these things. They love doing this.
Yep.
Like just certain, like it doesn't need to look a certain way. And it's really hard when you don't have that ability to be like, no, we're going to make it look different. And I think this year has been finding people for the team and the people we've been working with and collaborating with in general.
Yeah.
All been people who are like, they get that this is not going to look a certain way. This is going to look different. And if you're just going to tell me that it has to look X, Y, and Z because everybody's doing it, like you're not, like it's a no.
That's,
and I know you've actually shifted your mindset around that.
I was gonna say, I was talking about earlier, saying like what's changed since that last episode we recorded in 2019. I think that was a big part of it because, and again, for everybody who's people don't know me as well or whatever, I was in dentistry for 10 years. My degree's in chemistry. Like I was not in the online space. I mean, I obviously use social media for personal stuff. Like this whole world was new to me. And when I started and I was learning, I very much was like, no, this is how you have to do your thing with the webinar. You have to do this. And it's silly, and very much my mindset has shifted where I'm like, why? Who says? I'm like, that may work great for this other person, but if you hate webinars and it drains your energy, I'm like, why don't we figure out another way to do this? And that has totally shifted for me. You've seen that change in my mindset now.
I was gonna say, but why did that change? Because I think you said it actually in a Clubhouse at some point, but like what have you learned working with me, I guess, since the time that we've started?
Well, that's a big part of it. I think trying new things, but for me, part of it, I think comes down to confidence. That was part of it, is like being like, you know what, I have the confidence that I can figure out a different way to do this. I don't have to follow the path that everybody else has done. Like, I don't have to follow their roadmap. And that's a confidence thing, because when you're not sure of yourself, you're like, well, this is what works. I need to take the safe road. Versus once you start developing that confidence, you're like, you know what, I'm going to climb those rocks over there to get over the hill. Like that looks more fun or more interesting to me. And you have to have the confidence in yourself to step outside of the expected way of doing things or whatever. I think that's been for me one of the biggest things, is embracing that concept. And it took a while. It took a while to get through.
I kept pushing it because I've had that mindset. So for me, it was natural to be there. And I know you were way more, and you're more risk averse than me, and you should be, because that's kind of the role that you play. But also at the same time, it's like you can be risk averse, and I need that check, but I also need somebody who's willing to I've gotten, like, I remember earlier on, you were like, oh, well, wait until you're bigger before doing this. And I was like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like, no, we can do this now. Like, this is what's happened. Like, I just remember having a variety of conversations over the year or years now, but where it's like, I don't care what they're doing. We're going to figure something else out. Like, it doesn't need to look like, I don't care if it works for that person or that formula works for that person. It's not going to work for me. It's not working for me.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? And I think that's Yeah, and I think that's important, just learning in general, because that's the same thing with me. I'm like realizing I'm like, okay, this thing works for me, that thing doesn't work. Same thing. I have my own work style, our own work hours or whatever. It's just figuring out the things that work. And it's like, this may work for everybody else, but yeah, this does not work with the way my brain works or with what I want to be doing. Because the biggest thing I think too is when you keep trying to do it the way everybody else is doing and it's not aligned, one, it's just not as effective. But two, like you said, I think that increases the burnout because you're just so miserable doing this thing that you don't want to be doing because it doesn't work for you. So it's like, why not figure out the thing that works for you and then do that, because it's not going to drain you of all your energy and passion. But
I think you've really gotten like a first row seat to that, like to literally that entire lesson.
yep.
I
Well,
think
I
that's
think that's
something
why
that
I learned it. It's just going through that process with you. Again, like when you're, I'm in it, so I'm day in and day out. Like so I see what's going on. And I think we've both had to learn that process. But seeing that shift has been really interesting, and it's so much more exciting. Like I think you and I both feel like way more excited for what's coming up because we're like, this feels right. Like this feels good.
and
Versus
I'd like to be more transparent with people about that because I don't think I've it's not that I haven't been because, I if you know me personally, I tell everybody what I'm thinking all the time and how I feel. Like there's no I'm very, very, very transparent. Like integrity is very important to me. Like it's essential to me. Um, but I don't necessarily go on stories telling people like what I like or don't like about like a lot of this stuff does happen behind the scenes and I'd
yeah,
like to bring it to the forefront. But
yeah,
sometimes it's hard to do it in the moment or you're like doing these other things
yeah,
and it's not priority to like go online and share these
yeah,
aspects. That's another thing that I think is cool about this, where it's like, okay, we can just talk about the stuff that's going on depending on what's going on and share it in a way that doesn't feel like overly structured and just be real about it. Like, okay, this like there were definitely times over the last year that it's like, why are we doing this? And we needed to evaluate.
yeah.
Yeah. But now everything is I don't know, I'm excited
Exciting.
for what's coming up.
Yeah, me too. I think, like you said, and I think, what I think the biggest realization was when we realized too, looking at actual time spent, it's like we're spending 80% of our time on the thing that I like about 10%, and it's like instead of putting all that energy and time into the thing that you really love. And I think that was a wake up moment because we spent so long, and like you said, it's like, okay, well, this is what we're doing because like this is how you do it. And then it's just like you're miserable, largely there's just how much time you're putting into trying to make that thing happen versus like one is aligned. I think things just it's like you're trying to like swim upstream versus going downstream with the flow of the water because it's just that makes it a lot easier.
And as far as burnout goes, I'll talk more about what's been working, but even that's just things that I'm working through now because it's still very present and we're shifting the business in order to be aligned with where we want to go, but also to like save myself so nobody's burnt out. So it's exciting for everybody because I think a lot of times burnout isn't it's not just the work, it comes from like the not being aligned. It comes
Yep.
from doing things that you're like, I don't want to be doing like I have no interest in doing this at all and just forcing yourself and forcing yourself and forcing yourself. Just
Well,
over time you're like,
look at me with the dentistry. Before I started working with you, I mean, when I realized I wasn't going to go to dental school and then I was just doing like the front office stuff or whatever, I mean, I was just bored out of my mind. And it just drains you completely. Like I was so unhappy. And now like doing this stuff, I'm like, oh, this is great. I get to work on my own like flexible hours, like I get to sleep when I want, like and I'm doing something that's actually fun and mentally engaging. It makes it a lot easier. And it's like I could work a 14-hour day doing this thing that I actually find really interesting versus like 8 hours in the office. And I'm just like, when is this going to be over? Like there's something to be said for that when you're doing the thing that just doesn't feel right. I mean, it's not fun.
and so we have one more thing to talk about, and I don't know if we even want to go into it now because I'm like, maybe this will be a big thing. But Trisha and Frenemies, so Trisha Paytas and Ethan Klein, and what's been going on with them currently right now stopping recording Frenemies. I thought that was a really such an interesting topic and gets into kind of just the influence of that podcast and their synergy, but also conversations around mental health, conversations about working with friends and I guess soon to be family. It's just a lot of conversations around just influence in general. So anyway, if people are curious as to what I'm looking at this week, I'm following the Trisha Paytas Frenemies podcast.
Meltdown.
Yeah, whatever's going on there. And then for anybody else, I think maybe we can make this show right now. It's definitely forming. Like I had a doc with things that I was thinking like wanted to hit on. I'm going to be, I think we're going to be talking about, going to be sharing more often different things that I'm looking at, following, reading, listening to, all of that sort of stuff. Maybe we'll have different segments. Maybe we can do Q&A. I feel like we can do so much with this format because we're coming up with the format in real time. So this is a real time experiment. If you guys have anything in particular that you ever want me to comment on or whatever it is, like, please let me know. If you guys like this episode, let us know.
This is why this is fun, because it is, like you said, it's more casual and just more real, not that the other stuff's not real, like, fake stuff. You're not like a super scripted person or anything, but it's just more personal, I guess. And like the other thing, I'm curious too, like I would love to know if everybody wants to like hey, what, like, here's, like, do we want to spend, like you said, the segments, we want to spend 10 minutes talking about what we've been reading that week before giving opinion on like the current things or whatever. Like there's just so many directions we can take this right now. And I think this is a great opportunity, like I said too, just to interact with the audience more and like say, hey, what do you guys want to hear about, or what things are you looking at that are interesting that you want to hear our take on?
And I think my husband will be joining. Like this is kind of just like a thing that like maybe sometimes it'll just be me, but I remember a big thing that I was talking about with Shannon is just sometimes I don't want to be sitting down and just talking to myself. Like I like having somebody around to at least be there to listen to my like rantings and ravings, because sometimes it is weird to just like sit down by yourself and be talking to yourself. And I know you get used to it, but I think that there's something to having.
You need a sounding board. You're not good, like, or not that you're not good, but you don't enjoy, like you said, having a one-sided just like thing. You do better when you're getting feedback and engagement on what you're saying, because then it sparks more ideas and more comments for you.
Yeah, and even I was talking to, and this is all behind the scenes stuff, and so I'm happy to share all this stuff. I was talking to my husband the other day, even when it comes to content creation, it's almost like, and when we're going through the vision, and I don't mean this, it's going to come out wrong, but it's almost like that person doesn't need to even contribute or really say anything. I just need to know that they're hearing, they just need to be reacting a little bit, but that gets my creativity going. So like even when it comes to coming up with content and things, just having somebody who kind of gets it, like responding a little bit, just yeah, I need the sounding board in general, even when it's my own thoughts and feelings and I don't even necessarily maybe want input, it really helps me. So I think when like I'm not somebody who just wants to sit for hours by myself and like create captions and content by myself. That doesn't work. So I think that's why that team dynamic, like I'm always going to need a team of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going, just one last comment. I think that's, again, comes back to the whole working the way that works for you thing. Because a lot of, and I think it's great to talk about, because I think a lot of people are afraid to just do the thing that works for them, because they're like, well, this isn't how I'm supposed to do it. And so owning that and saying, hey, I need somebody just sitting there while I talk.
Yeah.
It's like, cool, own it. And I think that it's good to say that, I think, publicly, because so many people, I think, don't. And they're like, oh, I can't do that, or I can't do this way. It's like, yeah, you can't do whatever do what you want, do what works for you. It's all great.
And I'm excited too, because I'm also going to be talking more, and I don't know if it'll be on whatever this channel or, another one about, different things related to lifestyle and travel and other aspects of my life if you're interested in that. So definitely excited for what's coming up. And yeah, let us know and we'll see you soon. I'm like, I don't even know when the next one will be, but we'll definitely let you know. We don't have any cadence for this yet, but we will.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.